The grabber returns to wreak havoc in people's dreams. Today we're going to be talking about Nightmare on I'm sorry, The Black Phone 2. You know, it's hard to believe that the first Black Phone film came out in 2021. I remember I was in Austin. I went to was I in Austin? I was in one of those, San Antonio or Austin. And it just came out, and I went to the Alamo Draft House to watch the first one, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the first one. I thought that one was a really solid horror film, and I assume, I have not read the short story, a decent adaptation from the Joe Hill short story of the same name. I think it is called The Black Phone. But Ethan Hawke, Mason Thames, I think Thames is the way you pronounce his name, Madeline McGraw, and Jeremy Davies come back to reprise their roles in this sequel. Since I have not read the original short story, I'm not aware of like how far that story covers. Like, was this sequel like kind of touched on in the actual story? I don't know, but I wasn't aware or wasn't hoping that they were going to come out with a sequel. But I think the first one did well enough that a sequel was inevitable. Now, this one was written and directed by Scott Derrickson, who did the first one. When I initially saw the trailer for this movie, I was not excited. I thought to myself, this seems like a poor man's Nightmare on Elm Street, right? This is not Freddy Krueger. What kind of angle are they going to go with for this film? It seems that it was kind of focusing more on Gwen, who's Finney's sister, who was a great standout role in the first one. I really enjoyed her character in the first one, and I was kind of wondering how they were going to like put her in this scenario to where she seems like the main character now. How does she and the grabber have a connection? So I was very skeptical going into this movie. I was worried that I was not going to like this because, again, the trailer kind of made the movie look lame. And this movie takes place 4 years after that first film. I think one of the main things I enjoyed about this was how Finney is dealing with the traumatic events after that, because when you have something that major happening in your life and it's that tragic, your life isn't just normal afterwards. And you can see his dealing with it. He has anger issues. Has a lot of repressed emotions. He's just smokes weed now. And to deal with his issues, we see that there's remnants of his connection with the other side. Whenever there's a phone that's a payphone that rings and he answers it, he basically tells them, "I can't help you." And then he hangs up the phone, not really wanting to engage with anything going on with the other side. Now, Gwen, unfortunately, has no real choice in the matter. She starts having more intense dreams. She starts having like more intense visions where she's seeing these three boys who obviously are dead. And whenever someone grabs her in the dream, she sees that she has marks on her arm. If she gets cut in the dream, she starts bleeding. So she's kind of dealing with all this kind of like very supernatural yet realistic things that are happening, and she can't really control it, or that's at least in the beginning she doesn't know she can or she has any power to do so. You can see that Finney and Gwen's relationship has been fractured because Finney doesn't want to talk about any of the stuff that's happened beforehand, and Gwen, on the other hand, is kind of like trying to open up a little bit, but she's not getting any understanding as to what's happening to her now. And since there's a bit of a fracture in that relationship, like they just don't talk anymore. And the dad, who was kind of an alcoholic and abusive in the first movie, has kind of cleaned up his act, but he also kind of doesn't want to really discuss that, or he's not ready to discuss any of those kinds of things because what's happening with Gwen was what they believe led to their mother's unaliving herself. Gwen's scared that that's going to happen to her. Again, Finney doesn't want to talk about those issues, and the dad's kind of like turned off and kind of on the outside of everything that's happening because none of this is happening to him, but it's all happening to his kids, and he doesn't know how to relate to them. I think that's the strongest part of this film. I think whenever the grabber gets reintroduced, I think that part of the story is a little weak. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed Ethan Hawke, who I couldn't tell for like a second that it was him because whenever we go into the dream sequences, It has a very grainy kind of old VHS kind of cinematography to it, which I really enjoyed because that allowed us to decipher what's reality and what's the dream. And as the story kind of unravels further, we find how the grabber has been kind of involved in their lives long before the incident with Finney whenever he was abducted by the grabber in the first film. And unlike the first one, this one has more of a supernatural element and the mystery that they're trying to solve underneath it, as opposed to the first one that has more of a mystery angle and a slasher. And then that supernatural element is the black phone element, wherever Finney's talking with the other side and those victims. With the whole fact that the grabber can come into Gwen's dream, and again, I don't know if the grabber is capable of doing this with other people. You can't help but think of a Freddy Krueger type character or Nightmare on Elm Street. It just seems too obvious that that's what this is. Or at least that's a bit of the angle that they were going with this movie. Why they did that, I don't know. There had to be a way to bring the grabber back and to have some kind of effect, because at some point in the film, whatever rules they were trying to establish with the fact that the grabber can only do things in the dream, at some point, the grabber can do that in your dream. And no matter who's sleeping, or if they're, in the vicinity of the person who's dreaming, the grabber has a power over them too and can affect them, even though they can't see him because he's in Gwen's dream. Anyone around him can get thrown or cut or pushed or something, which was strange because that kind of just started happening and that wasn't really explained. I assume that at some point, like whenever all these people start getting involved, like his power stems from everyone's fear of what's happening, because they really can't explain what's happening to Gwen. So this is not a perfect movie. It's not a perfect sequel, but overall, it was a movie that I did enjoy more than I thought I would. I went in with kind of not completely low, but like kind of low, medium expectations. Again, because the trailer didn't really grab me and I wasn't really too excited about this movie. But since I saw the first one, I definitely was going to watch this one. And I think I had some faith in Scott Derrickson's direction since he was involved in the first one. I figured, well, give this one a chance because maybe they can take the story to a decent place, regardless of how not great I thought the trailer was. Overall, I would say if you were a fan of the first Black Phone, if you've seen the Black Phone, the first one, definitely check this one out. The soundtrack was cool. It had a lot of like 80s kind of really ominous synth stuff, and as soon as I hear that, I'm already like in. So like as soon as I heard that soundtrack, it already had like at least a 2 out of 5 for me. But overall, I would say with the story, the cinematography, the soundtrack, and all the great dramatic acting that is done by these characters, again, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I really was expecting to come out of this movie with at least like a 2.5. It almost hits like a 2-hour runtime, but I think it's still enjoyable, even though some of the pacing gets kind of like wonky somewhere in the middle, and whenever they have to go to the camp. But regardless of all that, I think it was a good movie. I enjoyed it, but this was definitely a far superior sequel than The Conjuring Last Rites, which was, excuse my language, a dog shit movie. And they still made that. That made a shit ton of money. Now, this one is probably one that should make that kind of money because I think overall it's a far superior film in every aspect. So I appreciate you watching. Thank you for checking out this review of The Black Phone 2. And we'll see you next time on another CineQuest video review.